Morning, everyone. My name is Flicker, and I just had a thought that I wanted to address as I was waking up today. Because I realized, and this is probably information I pulled from elsewhere, but I realized I should probably ask myself if I want to improve my mental and physical health, let alone my overall life quality, then I've got to ask myself, what are the stories I tell about myself, about who I am and what I'm capable of? How are those stories convenient and or believable to me? How can I reframe them so as to better serve me in growing as a person? And in what ways am I ignoring positive aspects of myself or relying on negative aspects to maintain a status quo that ultimately does not serve my growth as a person? Ultimately, it's really a whole like cluster of questions that would take me at least a few days, if not weeks, to go through, and I don't have the energy to go day after day after day after day. So that minimum timetable for if I did take that route would is just not available to me mentally. But if I went over the course of a few months, every now and then checking in and considering things, then I think I might be able to make some progress. Unfortunately, that does also run the risk of my brain trying to shut down or distract me when in low energy mode, so as to deflect away from those things and say, that's not enjoyable, that's not worth doing, let's just stick to the fun things, because the brain likes being efficient to the self-destructive degree. So there's all of that. Oh, what else? What else? What else? No. Mm, mm. Sparks draft, constructed resonance. Oh yeah, managed to make the goals for the visual image board of my personal goals, at least for the civil side of things. Because there's the details side over here, which is just yes. And then there's like aesthetics and presentation side here, where those details are expressed through different character attributes and reference points that I want to pull from in trying to design around such goals as an endpoint for my fictional self's character growth. Definitely retaining her spirit and personality, but her practicality, her ability to handle things without getting overwhelmed and otherwise is ultimately what I want to increase. Because in doing so, I hope to build a semi-stable fiction that can then be used to inspire me into self-growth time and time again, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily work if I misroute my own achievements or my own self-worth, which is why the story question came in earlier. Fucking love this image. Fucking, yeah. Ooh, that would actually be an interesting idea. Now I want to draw something. Because my linked line in this world is not very good at taking care of herself. I'm gonna be real. Due to self-destructive habits early on when she was back in grade school, junior high school, and whatnot, trying to live as a guy, in order to meet the expectations of others around her, since she did not know other things were possible, she went on to took on some of the worst traits possible. And it just leaned full into the apathy range, slowly and surely, while still trying to keep her morals intact. That did not work out in the end. That backfired majorly. Alright, so fighting wild resonance, bring that in. If I were to modify this dress so that way it is both elegant and flowing while also retaining the ability of movement, how would I do so? That's neat, but no. That's cool, but no. No, screen, invert, soft light, pin light, no, hard mix, darker color. There we go. Because the dress is already beautiful enough. So ultimately, the aesthetic there, I would not want to change a single bit. But I do want to retain the ability to be able to have my fictional self kick up if she were in such a dress. And down here, that looks more reasonable, but the pinch point is around this area in the waist. Because of how the clothing both hugs the body and also binds it in doing so. You probably want some durable but weak elastics that have high stretch range, low resistance. Uh, let's see. So most of the dress would stay the same. After all, the lace aesthetic is beautifully delicious. Ooh. How do I... Okay, so it goes like that, then it goes like that. And it peaks around there. Oh. Wonder how many reference points they pulled from just to make this art. It is damn good. In doing this, sure, I'm tracing in some regards, but in another regard, I'm also studying at the same time. Not necessarily in the sense of it pulling a million references and doing it the proper way, but instead of learning about how others express weight of clothing and the dynamics of it through their own styles, and thinking about the interpretation process for how that works, so that way I can then learn about the decision-making process and why they make some decisions as opposed to others. Ooh, they've got good anatomy tier too. That looks absolutely lovely, but if there's no stretch factor, then that's actually going to make breathing while sitting down harder. So you'd want some stretch factor in there, wherein each line wrapping around has a little bit of extra that it both helps it cling to the body without necessarily having to exert too much force or energy in doing so. Probably have this tuck around into itself via that. That's where the tailbone is. Well, because if it clings to the body too tight, then it's not going to be dynamically adaptive. Yeah, I'm going to ruin the aesthetic a little bit to reimagine it on my own terms. Mm. Of course, such a dress, if it's too durable, isn't going to rip under pressure, which means it could easily get caught on things and therefore become a detriment when fighting. So if we take that, then it's a bit like this with the fabric. Alright, so you'd want that, definitely. Am I very original? No, I am not. That's what I just realized. I'm gonna be doing that, then I might as well have that going like that. That way it matches up with the lining. And for as much as that provides a skin tight figure adaptation, definitely a little bit more childish looking, definitely not half as elegant. But I'm sure someone would be able to design it so that way it looks both elegant and is maneuverable. So I'm not going to worry too much on that end. Ooh, so that's in the background. Okay, that helps me figure out a lot. Sure, you want the clothes to be durable enough to withstand. You'd want the clothes to be durable enough to withstand scratches, but weak enough to where if you need to tear it open, you can tear it open. I don't care how delicate the materials are. If I need to fucking fight for my life, I am not going to simply worry about the price tag on something that I would have practically made myself. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because then if I follow along there, by detaching this lower section from the upper section, that means I can have it dynamically attached to here while still providing the same illusion of. Hmm. Could go for even making some of the seam work into a little motif in and of itself, like nails at the edge of the dress. Not seamlessly elegant, but practically elegant. The attention to detail they have here for the weight of the clothing is absolutely stunning, though. 10 out of 10. Would not be able to think of this myself. And then we're going to want to keep the lines a little bit more, a little bit shorter here, so as to imply more breadth of movement. If I were to erase that and that, then the line would then be repositioned to there. But then that would mean there's a sharper crease around here. and it would kind of fall into itself back here, but that's out of sight. So how do I convey that in the fabric itself? Well, you do that. And then you'd add that to make it look like it's twisting in on itself. But then that wouldn't be quite the same either, because then it would be hanging further, even if it were attached to such a seam. Still not very good at drawing feet, and I don't know when or if I'm ever going to get good at doing so. Alright. Uh, hmm. That would actually be an interesting change. To have it so that way there's a band along here that separates the different portions and components. Yes, but no. Hmm. No, if I were to really try and draw this out properly, I would have to take this semi-traced reference point and then try to design it myself all over again with the same pose, but without being able to trace it. Because I've internalized a bit more of the differences between lace weight and fabric weight, but that's still not enough to go and draw it on my own yet. Because if I can't internalize the thought process and understand it better, then it doesn't matter how much I trace, I'm not going to be able to draw it on my own. And that's something I think a lot of beginning artists fail to recognize when they choose to try and cheat via tracing. Is that instead of actually trying to understand the process behind why the original artist made such decisions, they're just looking for quick fame and wanting to simply say, "Ooh, look at what I made." But no, that's not the point of the art. The point of the art is to internalize a variable of the world such that you can better express it over a 2D drawing. Alright, so if I do that, then what's left in a weirdness? Well, that, yes, but that would then clash with this, so... mm, no, because then... yes, and then... somewhat. Okay, but what about that? Because I can understand it in the sense of what it was originally drawn as. But how would that appear in this, with what I'm trying to draw here instead? No, that doesn't preserve the idea there. That kind of does. Look back at the original. The weight over on this end, because it's dynamically different from the anchor point over here, is the reason why that gets created, because it's also hugging the leg there. So if I really wanted to make it work in a different sense, then it would be something more akin to that, somewhat. Yes, but no. And that doesn't fit in quite right. So what, do I do that? But then that doesn't make for the weight properly. So I would need to redraw this line, 9.5. Oh, that kind of works, kind of doesn't. Oh. Adding more lines mindlessly is not going to change it. So what? Would that be kind of twisting upon itself in a different way? Well, yes, but also no. Because that would not twist. Because it's all about maintaining the twist lines and making sure that the weight is properly conveyed, even if some of the cloth is out of sight. So if we were to go back to this, yeah, that doesn't work with how it's attached to there. That might work, but that would still be like hella risky. And if I did that, then how am I going to properly address this? Because the edge of the cloth would fold inwards. Also maintaining integrity in a different regard. Oh, and then it contrasts with that too. So how would I acknowledge that? Hmm. Yeah, no, they really made this work quite well. The amount of effort that goes into stuff like this, just the clothing alone, is often overlooked, but that does not mean it is any less important, because they keep the wavy line, probably hooks around here somewhat. So if that's not lace there, but still the same cloth, then the lace would be semi-connected. Not completely, but partially. And if that's the case, then we can change our fundamental ideas on this to where there we go. And then the lace can hang off of here and kind of stitch into the substance here. Oops. Alright, hold on a moment. Hell, you could even do something, you could even do one better, to where the lace kind of connects up to here, but it then stitches into the edge of this, where it separates underneath this section of the fabric instead of staying as one continuous piece of cloth all the way around, sewn together. Yeah, and then the lace would be from over here then. No. Alright, then I can erase these lines. Add a sense of depth. Alright, a little confusing, a little inconsistent, but otherwise not a half-bad attempt at reinterpreting it. Definitely some tracing, so I can't use it yet. But I can use this semi-trace sketch as a reference point for a redesign and proper framing of it. Also, if I were to do that, then I would want to do this. There we go. Remember line of sight. Any other details on this that I'm overlooking in terms of layering potential? Well, yes. No, there's that line. And then this cluster of lines can be redone, because it looks like they were intersecting too much to distinguish between fabric and body. Let's see, if I were to then take this, think about body proportions, then it would be more so like that. There we go. Not sure if this is actually going to work though, because this would leave the long front section longer than the back section. So I might need to redraw a different line here. Yes, but that's just the general curve. That's not interpreting the weight of the fabric. Yeah, no. And that feels like it's a bit more reasonable. Not necessarily as dynamic as the original with how it's body tight, but that doesn't mean it can't be still useful. By having this lower section not attached to this section here, it allows for a bit more cover. And then if I were to draw a strap between these two sections, not elegant at all, but practical. Hmm, it's better. And if I add this on here and this underneath, yeah, I think that turned out half decent. delete us. Hide that. Also, why is that not showing up more along this area? Hey! Because that doesn't work as something dynamic. This might, though. No, because I didn't keep the reference point alive. And also, that doesn't make sense. That's too close together for what I want to do. Oh. That's why it doesn't feel quite right. Because there's that. So definitely a bit more loose, but otherwise not too many modifications needed. Elastic band, and then it flips back into this. Modified semi-sketch. That line doesn't actually help at all. Because then I could technically add a line there, but then that would invalidate that curved line there. Topology is a bitch. Alright. Anyways, I'm gonna be done with this for now. I'll see you all later. Bye.